In 1959, a team of experienced hikers in Russia went missing. When they were finally discovered, all 9 of them lie dead, under very mysterious circumstances. This event, known as the Dyatlov Pass incident, has gone down as one of the most mysterious deaths of all time, but some new data may have solved the mystery once and for all. But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe, and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. On January 27, 1959, 7 men and women went on a hiking and skiing trip in the Ural Mountains of Russia. Their plan was to hike from the city of Vyazhai to the top of a mountain named Otorten. It was going to cover 306 kilometers, 190 miles, over 14 days. Let me stop for a second and acknowledge something I never hear people talk about when this mystery comes up. This was an ambitious and dangerous trip these guys were on. They were going to be hiking, camping, and skiing for 2 straight weeks over nearly 200 miles of mountains in Russia in January. I think it's safe to say there were a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong. The group consisted of graduates and students from Ural Polytechnical Institute. All of them were experienced hikers and skiers, which they would have to be to attempt a trip like that. In fact, that's one of the things that people point to, is that the fact they were such experienced hikers makes this whole thing even weirder. To be fair, there are some super weird circumstances around this particular expedition. Okay, so they left on January 27th. There was a 10th member of the group named Yuri Yudin. He got sick at the start of the trip and dropped out. Dyatlov told Yudin he would send a telegram to their sports club when they returned to Vyazhai. This was supposed to happen by February 12th, but he told Yudin it could be longer. So that day passes with no message. Nobody thinks anything of it. But then more and more days pass. Relatives got concerned and demanded a rescue mission. The first rescue group of volunteers set out on February 20th. Then the army and police got involved. The hiking group was located on February 26th. This is when things get strange. Let's start with an abandoned tent. It was half torn, covered in snow, and all of the hikers' belongings were still in it, including their shoes. Even stranger, it looked like it had been cut from the inside. Footprints were found. They lead to the woods nearby to the bodies of Doroshenko and Krivonishenko, who were beside the remnants of a fire. Also, they were wearing only their underwear. A nearby tree had broken branches up about 5 meters, 16 feet, that suggested they climbed the tree to look for something. Traces of skin in the bark supported that theory. Searchers found Dyatlov and Kolmogorov's bodies the next day between the tent and the woods. Slobodin's body was found on March 5th. All 3 looked like they tried to return to the tent, and like the others, were found in only their underwear. Medical examiners named hypothermia as the cause of their deaths. While the fact that they were found half-naked is strange, there is a logical explanation. It's called paradoxical undressing, and it's something that happens a lot in the final stages of hypothermia. As the nerves become damaged and brain functions start to dwindle, it creates a sensation of extreme heat. People feel like they're burning up, so they strip off their clothes, which of course only accelerates the process. The searchers found the rest of the bodies over the next couple of months. But more mysteries appeared. It took the searchers longer to find the other group members because they were in a ravine covered in snow, 76 meters, 250 feet, from the tree mentioned earlier and close to an improvised shelter. These members were dressed better than the others, but they had fatal injuries, like chest fractures and skull damage. One of them was even missing her tongue. One doctor described the internal injuries as similar in force to what you'd receive in a car crash, but there were no external wounds. The weirdest thing of all, some of their clothes were radioactive. The government's official statement at the time was that Dyatlov committed a series of mistakes, and the group died from overwhelming natural forces. Some of the mysteries have logical answers. We already talked about the reason for the disrobing. An animal may have taken the missing tongue, but the strange jumble of other evidence has caused some wild speculation about what happened to the hikers. Why did they abandon their tent, cutting themselves out instead of just unzipping it? What caused the internal injuries with no external ones? And what's with the radioactive clothes? So, there are a few theories about what exactly happened to them. One is that an indigenous people in the area called the Mansi attacked them. But the Mansi are known to be peaceful, and there were no indications of an attack. Another theory is wild animals killed them. Investigators didn't see any evidence to support this. And then, some people think the group ate psychedelic mushrooms, which lead to their disorientation. Of course, some people believe things like a Yeti or aliens attacked them. An interesting bit is that other hikers in the area did report seeing orange globs in the sky around the same time the hikers were traveling. But that could be related to parachute mine tests the Soviet military was conducting at the time in that region. Those mines are known to cause internal, but not external, damage to bodies. So, maybe that was it? Or could infrasound lead to their deaths? A wind phenomenon named the Kármán vortex street can create a powerful and terrifying sound. Winds blowing through the pass could have been warped as they hit the sides of the mountain. This would have created a series of small tornadoes with deafening noise. Under certain conditions, the noise can be subtle and produce infrasound, a vibration in the air with a frequency so low human ears can't detect it. Studies have shown that it can affect humans with sleep loss, shortness of breath, and extreme dread. While that sounds interesting, I think the most plausible explanation is something more common than that: an avalanche. Now, the area they were in wasn't very steep. Plus, their diaries said the snow was thin at the time. But there are some new findings that show it could have been a slab avalanche. There are two main types of avalanches: loose snow and slab, and they behave very differently. All avalanches have massive potential energy. How much depends on their height and the mass of snow. For example, if a small avalanche contains 1,000 kilograms of snow, its force is 9,810 newtons. Loose snow avalanches often start on a small area and expand as they move. They are caused by snow getting deposited at a steeper angle than the snow's natural angle of repose. Slab avalanches are different and way more dangerous. With slab avalanches, instead of a little bit of snow slowly accumulating and spreading out, an entire layer of snow slides away all at once. Basically, the force of gravity overcomes the bond between the snow layers, and they just separate. This massive amount of snow falling all at once packs a giant wallop, and it doesn't take a lot to trigger them. Sometimes it's the wind, sometimes it's the victim themselves. The avalanche theory for the Dyatlov Pass is the most plausible. But it was the slab avalanche theory that was proposed by two scientists based in Switzerland in a study published in Communications, Earth and Environment in 2021. The scientists in question are Johann Gaume and Alexander Puzrin, and what they did was they scoured Soviet archives about the incident and then applied computer avalanche simulations to it. There were some questions they wanted to answer, such as why there weren't obvious signs of an avalanche when the search team arrived 26 days later, whether the slope angle above the tent was steep enough for an avalanche, why the skull and thorax injuries weren't typical for avalanche victims, and whether the hikers made a cut into the slope for the tent. That last one has been a bit of a debate for a while, but that's a common thing that campers do in the snow. They clear out a little space in a snowbank and then use that snowbank as a barrier against wind. The theory is that the campers did that when they set up their tent and may have triggered a slab avalanche that then fell on top of them. The big question is, what caused the delay in the avalanche? Why didn't it trigger immediately when they cut it? Why did it take several hours before it fell on them? Their theory suggests a deeply buried weak snow layer might have initially supported the weight but eventually gave way due to strong katabatic winds accumulating more snow. Computer models indicate an avalanche could have occurred between 7.5 and 13.5 hours after the hikers made the cut. As researchers wrote in their study, dynamic avalanche simulations suggest that even a relatively small slab could have led to severe but non-lethal thorax and skull injuries, as reported by the post-mortem examination. They concluded that pitching a tent on even a mild slope of fewer than 30 degrees can be dangerous. Some objected to this theory, arguing there was no snow cover on the slope, no wind that night, the slope was too flat, and avalanches didn't happen there. However, 2 Russian scientists confirmed the presence of snow and wind that day and night. To address concerns about the slope's incline, researchers assisted a documentary team producing the Dyatlov Mystery. 2 expeditions were conducted in March and September 2021. The winter expedition had snow cover obscuring the terrain, but the summer session provided a clearer view. Using a drone, they created a high-res 3D digital model revealing slopes exceeding 28 degrees, with many steeper than 30 degrees. These inclines were not isolated. They were widespread, making it likely that the hikers were near one regardless of where they pitched their tent. To test whether avalanches occurred in the area, they organized another expedition. However, extreme weather made travel difficult, with winds strong enough to knock them over. When they arrived, they found evidence of not just 1, but 2 slab avalanches. Since the study's publication, several documented slab avalanches have been recorded on the eastern slope, away from the Dyatlov group's tent. Mountain guides reported that one avalanche became invisible less than an hour after snowfall, suggesting that the absence of evidence 3 weeks after the incident was unsurprising. As for other mysteries, one body was missing a tongue. However, in nature, scavengers often target the mouth and eyes since they are easy access points. It's not unusual for animals to consume these soft tissues first. Another point of speculation involves slightly radioactive clothing, leading to theories of a nuclear test. However, the radiation levels were far too low to indicate a nuclear explosion. A likely explanation is that they had old items with glow-in-the-dark paint containing radium, commonly found in clocks and camping gear. When disturbed by the avalanche, these materials could have broken and spread onto their clothes. Reports of lights in the sky on the night of the incident have fueled speculation. However, these are largely unsubstantiated, with most believing they were related to military exercises, which, if true, could have contributed to triggering the avalanche. The researchers acknowledge they haven't completely solved the case. There's no way to prove this theory definitively, but they have demonstrated its plausibility. In cases like these, the most mundane answer is often the most likely. While some might find that disappointing, I find it fascinating. The idea that life's biggest mysteries can sometimes be explained by simple, everyday events makes the world even more unpredictable. For the record, I don't think there's anything random about a group of hikers trekking through the Russian mountains in January getting caught in an avalanche. In fact, I'd call it pretty darn inevitable in the long run.